Could all pro-life legislative gains be wiped out with a single Senate bill? Jason Calvi covers this alarming proposal. Children in a war zone. Parents in Gaza worry about their kids suffering war trauma. A place of peace. We visit the papal gardens where popes find solace. And they call it a castle town. This Portugal community flashes back centuries to the Middle Ages. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, July 15th, 2014. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick as we begin looking at your news now. A bill proposed in the U.S. Senate would eliminate many pro-life laws in the country. Today, those on both sides of this debate testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Our Jason Calvi was there. He joins us from Capitol Hill tonight. Jason, tell us what's in this bill.
Hey, Brian, there's about 226 restrictions on abortion in this country since 2011. They include everything from requiring an ultrasound before an abortion to banning most abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. But today, pro-abortion supporters are trying to counter those laws.
Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal is fighting.
The cascading avalanche of restrictions on reproductive health care around the country.
So he's proposed a bill called the Women's Health Protection Act. It would get rid of many abortion restrictions across the country. Take Texas's 2013 law, which bans abortions after 20 weeks. That law also requires abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at a local hospital.
What's happened since this bill was passed, that about a third of the clinics have closed, and if the last piece of the bill is not enjoined by a court, we're going to be down to under 10 in Texas.
But this professor of medicine at Duke says there's many reasons different states are placing limits on abortion clinics.
One of the reasons that abortion providers don't want to get hospital privileges is because they can't get privileges. They have a trail of injured patients, they have a trail of adverse actions against their license in several jurisdictions.
Myra Myers knows about the physical and mental risks of abortion firsthand. She wishes she had more information before her decision.
If I'd known the truth, that there was a child involved, I know my husband and I would not have aborted.
We asked abortion supporters why they're opposed to these laws.
What about the laws that sometimes mandate ultrasounds before a woman can go through with abortion? Why are you against that? Well, unfortunately, we weren't able to give you the answer to that question because we were kicked out of the hearing room by Senate staff. Today at the hearing, Senator Lindsey Graham proposed allowing a vote and a debate on both this proposal and a proposal he made, which would ban most abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. Brian?
Thanks, Jason. National Right to Life President Carol Tobias joining us tonight. She just testified at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. You say that this should be called the Abortion Without Limits Until Birth Act. Explain that.
This bill, S 1696, would wipe out the reasonable limits that have been placed on abortion by legislators elected by the people. Pretty much any law that would place any kind of limit or reduce any kind of access to abortion would be declared invalid from fertilization until birth.
Does this bill have a chance of being passed?
It's possible. 2/3 of the Democratic senators are co-sponsors of the bill. We are actually encouraging a vote on the bill.
Really? Why?
We think the American people should know where their senators stand on this bill and whether they think there should be a law that would completely wipe out all the state limits on abortion, state and federal laws on abortion.
There's a real line being drawn here. We're just a few months away from the midterm congressional elections. Is there significance to that in the timing of all this?
Absolutely. The Democrats are tying this all into the so-called war on women, the Hobby Lobby case. They're bringing it all up because they want to activate their supporters to get involved in the election. I really think they have no intention of letting this bill come to the floor for a vote because they don't want to expose their true position to the voters. But that's why we're encouraging them to actually take a vote on the bill.
Could this and should this activate pro-lifers now?
Oh, definitely. This is a bill that exposes the radical nature of the abortion industry. They actually think the abortionists should be regulating themselves. They would oppose state health and safety standards set by the legislature for abortion facilities. It would wipe out conscience clauses. This is a great bill for pro-lifers to take to their friends and neighbors and say, this is what the other side means when they say pro-choice.
What would you say is the most effective way to counter this?
We're encouraging them to vote on it. I think we will see them run for the hills. They're not going to let this come to the floor for a vote. We want the Senate to vote on this along with the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. Let the senators have a choice. You know, the Senate can have a choice on these abortion issues as to which way they think the Senate should go and where the country should go on the abortion issue.
National Right to Life President Carol Tobias, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, two prominent Catholic bishops are warning the Senate that another bill aimed at challenging the Supreme Court's Hobby Lobby decision threatens religious rights and would likely reduce health coverage. Boston Cardinal Sean O'Malley and Baltimore Archbishop William Lori warn the measure could override all religious exemptions from the health care mandates. In a letter to Senate leaders, the bishops say it could potentially force employers to cover abortions as well. They warn that employers with religious objections would likely feel compelled to drop all health insurance, actually reducing health coverage. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. One of the deadliest attacks since 2001 destroyed a busy market and mosque in eastern Afghanistan today. A suicide bomber blew up a car filled with explosives, killing 89 people. At least 40 wounded were taken to hospitals. Dozens of shops were destroyed. You can see Afghan government officials inspecting the damage after rescue workers cleared out. No group has claimed responsibility yet. The Taliban denies any involvement. In Russia, state media reports 3 metro train cars derailed in an underground tunnel in Moscow during the Tuesday morning rush hour. 15 people died, more than 100 others were injured. The cause of the derailment is not clear at this point, but the head of Moscow's transportation department says it was not a terrorist attack. Sunni lawmaker Dr. Salim Ujaburi has been elected by the Iraqi parliament as the new speaker. His election marks the first formal step in the formation of a new government that could help Iraq confront the threat of militants. So far, incumbent Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is refusing to step aside despite intense pressure to do so. Parliament now has 30 days to elect a president. Well, the U.S. economy may be improving, but not enough to fully satisfy Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen. She testified before a Senate Banking Committee today, saying the Fed will continue buying bonds and keeping short-term interest rates low to help stimulate the economy. Yellen says too many Americans remain unemployed and wages are rising too slowly.
About 4%. Real gross domestic product is estimated to have declined sharply in the first quarter. The decline appears to have resulted mostly from transitory factors.
Yellen plans to deliver similar testimony before a House committee tomorrow. Critics have cautioned that keeping the stimulus policies in place could lead to inflation. Members of Congress bluntly challenged the interim leadership of the Department of Veterans Affairs during a contentious 5-hour hearing last night.
Will you please admit, though, that there are still veterans waiting for their disability claims because they have gone to the court?
I will admit, Chairman, that there are veterans waiting on particular decisions on an initial claim, which we are paying.
The Department of Veterans Affairs claims it made tremendous progress in reducing a disability claims backlog. But a just release report states that in its rush to reduce the backlog, the VA is paying out millions in benefits to veterans who have yet to prove they are entitled to them. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal is taking a next step forward in his opposition to Obamacare. Jindal's nonprofit group, America Next, is distributing an analysis of the health care law's effect on rising premiums. The analysis is expected to be used as campaign fodder for GOP candidates and incumbents ahead of the 2014 midterm elections. Jindal is seen as a potential 2016 Republican presidential candidate. Well, the violence in the Middle East has not let up. The Israeli offensive on Gaza has resumed following continued rocket fire from Hamas. The Israeli military says Hamas militants have fired 47 rockets since Israel suspended airstrikes Tuesday morning. Israel's leader says the country will hit the militant group hard.
We are prepared to continue and intensify our operation to protect our people. And for this, we expect full support.
Earlier, Israel accepted a proposed ceasefire with Hamas set forth by Egypt. The armed wing of Hamas rejected that proposal, so Israeli airstrikes resumed. President Obama talked about this growing conflict in Gaza last night at the White House. He's calling for both sides to return to the negotiating table, describing a new plan offered by Egypt as promising.
I believe further escalation benefits no one, least of all the Israeli and the Palestinian people. So we're going to continue doing everything we can to facilitate a return to the 2012 ceasefire. We are encouraged that Egypt has made a proposal to accomplish this goal, which we hope can restore the calm that we've been seeking. More broadly, however, the situation in Gaza reminds us again that the status quo is unsustainable.
Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 180 Palestinians as Hamas rockets continue to target cities in Israel. Hamas publicly mocked Egypt's ceasefire proposal, calling it a joke. Continuing air raids are a grave concern for families with children in Gaza. As our Catherine Elliott reports, parents are scrambling to shelter their kids from the trauma of war.
It's a scene too common in Gaza right now. Young children, many in critical condition, carried into hospitals like these, fighting for survival. A week after Israel began its offensive against militants in the Hamas-controlled Gaza, more than 170 Palestinians have been killed, hundreds more injured.
Women and children are more than half of the casualties, and children form a third of the total casualties.
For some, like 4-year-old Shaima al-Masri, their injuries are the least of their problems. Now in stable condition at the Al-Shifa hospital, Shaima lost her mother, her 17-year-old brother, and her 14-year-old sister last week when 2 Israeli missiles struck as the family walked in their neighborhood. Her aunt worries about how she will protect Shaima if the strikes continue.
Where do I hide her? When the child comes to hide in my arms and I find the entire house falling on top of us, what do I do then?
To Israeli mothers, Sama al-Masri has this message.
Just like you fear for yourselves, we fear for ourselves too. Just like you fear for your children, we fear for our children too.
Israel has carried out more than 1,300 airstrikes over the past week in an attempt to diminish Hamas's ability to fire rockets. Over the weekend, it widened its range of targets to civilian institutions with suspected Hamas ties. In return, Hamas has fired nearly 1,000 rockets and mortars at Israel and says it won't be the first to cease fire. The offensive marks the heaviest fighting since a similar 8-day campaign in November 2012 to stop Gaza rocket fire. Catherine Elliott, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, what happens to immigrant children once they get to the U.S.? We'll show you. And the Pope is on vacation. We take you inside his gardens where he spends time strolling and praying. On Tuesday, July 15th, thanks for joining us on EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. As immigrants continue to flood border state detention centers, the first group of undocumented immigrants are now on their way back to their native countries. They've been deported. Here in Washington, lawmakers are trying to bridge political gaps in addressing the crisis at the border. On Capitol Hill, 2 Texas lawmakers are unveiling bipartisan legislation to address the problem. But the bill's future is far from certain. Republican Senator John Cornyn and Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar are collaborating on the bill. It modifies existing law, removing the requirement that unaccompanied minors not from Mexico or Canada get a hearing before being deported.
We got about 12 days to get the job done. We have an emergency bill. Let's put the resources that we need to put down there, and not only for the border, not only for judges, not only for ICE, but also for the Latin America countries, and I just got back from there. So it's a full funding appropriation that we have to do, emergency bill, but we still have to do policy changes.
The bill meets some Republican demands for a quick return of most young immigrants to their home countries. It also meets some Democratic demands, allowing children who are victims of human trafficking or who are facing a credible threat of persecution to appear before an immigration judge to seek asylum. There are still sticking points. The bill has no Democratic sponsor in the Senate. Also, questions such as how much should be spent, who gets deported, and how quickly, and can the bill gain political traction as pressure mounts on lawmakers to act before a recess begins in just 3 weeks. Meanwhile, schools around the country are seeing a very human side of this immigration influx. Catherine Zeltner has more.
Tucked in this strip mall near a dialysis center and a banquet hall, a place for hope. This is the country with big opportunities, and this is the dream. This is the dream for everybody.
Houston's Liberty High School serves a large immigrant population. Many came to the United States as unaccompanied minors with similar stories, joining a parent fleeing extreme poverty or gangs.
There are many cases where they have experienced traumatic circumstances, either back in their home country before they came to the U.S. or on their way to the U.S.
Guatemala native Ronald Pajoy remembers how smugglers treated people. He came alone to the U.S. in 2007 at age 15.
They don't care about them, children, as a guy, woman, and they do whatever they want.
But once children like Pajoy arrive in the country, they have the right to enroll in school, regardless of immigration status, presenting a different kind of challenge.
Yeah, sometimes I try to give up, but because it was hard. That's another language you have to learn.
Teacher Edison James, who himself emigrated from Grenada years ago, says it's important to help students stay positive.
We also have to demonstrate to the students that they can make it. It is possible, and also show them that we will not give up on them.
The government estimates 90,000 children and teens, primarily from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, could make the journey to the U.S. alone by the end of September. An influx schools in Houston and other parts of the country are struggling to meet. Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. The Holy Father is calling for urgent intervention to protect those unaccompanied children. The pontiff says such measures should include an information campaign on the dangers of the journey. He called on the international community to adopt, quote, new forms of legal and safe migration, end quote. Francis issued his message in a letter to a Vatican conference on migration in Mexico. That meeting is drawing attention to the tens of thousands of children crossing the border without parents. Well, Pope Francis is taking his summer break right now, although he still keeps a very busy schedule. One place he can always find peace is in his beautiful Vatican gardens. Alan Holdren gives us a peek inside tonight.
These summer days, the Vatican gardens are an oasis. These are the gardens where Pope Francis passes from one meeting to another, and Benedict XVI still walks. He often prays the Rosary, here at the replica of the Lourdes Grotto. It's a landscape little known, but one that covers the majority of the smallest state on earth. It's all the Pope's backyard. Just down the street from all of this is Castle St. Angelo, formerly the mausoleum of the Emperor Hadrian, then another papal residence, today a museum. The castle today is surrounded by this park. But the most spectacular papal gardens are 15 miles from here at Castle Gandolfo, and they've just been opened to the public. These are the pontifical villas. They were once the summer home of the emperors. Now they house the Pope's farm and are an off-the-beaten-path tourist destination.
Unless you see them, you can't imagine the beauty of these gardens.
I've been living in Italy for 25 years. So it's something I've never seen before, and I've never had this opportunity. So I'm here today because I had this chance.
Here, it really seems like you're in a sort of paradise. Something incredible.
While Pope Francis won't be visiting these gardens this year, he can count on hundreds of others taking respite in his gardens in the heat of the Italian summer. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, Twitter turns 8. Tonight, a look at the influence the social media site has on culture. And we visit a medieval castle in Portugal for a dynamic celebration of history. From the Twitter account of Pope Francis, dear young people, do not be mediocre. The Christian life challenges us with great ideals. Thanks for joining us tonight. And the Holy Father is just one of millions using Twitter. After launching to the public on this day 8 years ago, Twitter is now one of the most popular social media platforms. The first tweet ever came from Twitter founder Jack Dorsey. He wrote, "Just setting up my Twitter." Since its public launch in 2006, there are now 255 million monthly active Twitter users with 500 million tweets sent per day. The social media site is an international phenomenon supporting more than 35 languages. Kevin Locher from the American Press Institute joins us now to talk about Twitter. Kevin, how would you say Twitter has changed in these past 8 years?
Well, besides the spelling, there's been more and more people who have adapted Twitter and use it as kind of part of their news appetite, and as well as their kind of community appetite. They kind of interact with people all the time. Now there's 16% of all adults are on Twitter, and that includes, you know, the president is on there as well. More politicians are on there, and worldwide you get all sorts of political figures, religious figures who are there as well, including the Pope, who has 9 accounts actually, including one in Latin.
Really? So what is it about Twitter that the other social media platforms don't offer?
Well, Twitter is particularly good as a gateway for conversations about events, things that are happening right now. That's why you see hashtags promoted heavily at sporting events, and that's the same reason why you see lots of conversation when Pope Francis, for instance, says something about who am I to judge. It's a place where people go when news breaks. It's a place where people go when there's a sporting event. And it's a place that, because of that, helps or shapes the conversations of those events that take place. It's an important place for being when.
Not everyone's on Twitter, though. I mean, baby boomers like us think that tweeting is for the birds. Sorry about that. Do you think that social media might create a rift between generations? You're a millennial.
Some yes and some no. In many cases, social media like Twitter is just being something that's added to, you know, what people do with news, the way they consume news. But it is also important for setting things like political narratives. So when you have a lot of younger people that are on Twitter more so than baby boomers, that kind of sets the stage for what people write about. A lot of journalists are on Twitter. It kind of creates the narrative for the public discussions that we have every day.
So Twitter's the hot thing today. What's next in social media?
WhatsApp, Snapchat. But I think Twitter is here to stay for a while.
Okay, I didn't realize they changed the spelling.
I did. If you look at that first tweet, there was no I's and no E, I believe.
Very interesting.
They changed the logo, too.
I do want to clarify that our team is on Twitter, and you can follow us on Twitter. So we're very active on Twitter, just me as an individual. All right, Kevin, we appreciate you being with us tonight. We'll have you back.
Glad to be here.
And tonight, we take a trip back in time. A castle town in Portugal celebrates the spirit of the Middle Ages and brings to life the traditions of the past. It could be a film set, but this is an annual festival drawing tourists from around the world. They're celebrating the medieval pageantry of the town, just an hour away from Lisbon. It's a castle town, and Óbidos holds this festival every summer. With its medieval castle, the fortified town offers a unique location to recreate the 13th century legends. This year's theme is based on the story of the siege of the castle by King Sancho II's younger brother.
The population of Óbidos always remained loyal to the king.
Tourists come from around the world to see the festival. Natalie West from Florida is fascinated by the whole experience.
In Óbidos, there's this magic. I mean, it's real. These castles, these walls, there's so much history here. There's just a magic.
Medieval Óbidos continues until August 3rd. Back to Óbidos. See if I can get that right. Well, you see it tomorrow night, and we encourage you to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and watch again anytime you like on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. We leave you with a unique way that some tourists are soaking in our nation's capital this summer on a tour bus that floats. Mark Irons went along for the ride.
And there's only about 100 of these left. This is an original 1943 amphibious vehicle. These tours, they go in the water. So we spend an hour on land and 30 minutes in the water.
You look at the north side, the United States Senate side of the Capitol. This is a building I think every American ought to visit once in their lifetime to see these documents in the original and make this country.
It's incredible. It's one of the best things I've done in D.C. Sometimes you can get wet. It does happen when you hit the water.
Okay, we're going to take this 72-year-old veteran into the water. If anybody feels their feet getting wet, let me know right away.
It's pretty cool that you can go on land and water with this thing.
Just off the high tide. The high tide is just starting to go down. There's only 2 runways in this airport. The one they're landing on is the north-south runway. That's a long...
We don't have these kind of vehicles in Denmark, so we don't have tours like this going on land and then into the water.